Halt the recording.
I'm picturing when the car gets the broth as hell.
Welcome to the Witness Box, everybody. I'm your host, Joshua Diaz, alongside my co-host, Dr. Gary Brucato, author of The New Evil, and a forensic psychologist. Not many people have the qualifications that he does, even though a lot of people think they have the qualifications. They surely don't. And we're happy to have you here as always. And Chris McDonough of The Interview Room, a homicide detective extraordinaire with a solvability rate north of 90%, which is almost unheard of these days. And how are both of you doing this evening?
Very well.
Doing great.
Let's get the energy up, boys. Let's do it.
Doing great, Josh. How are you?
All right. There we go. All right, good. So tonight's subject matter is going to be, I would say it's definitely a troubling story that we're going to cover. And Dr. Gary, you were just on Court TV tonight.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about your experience on Court TV and what we're going to be talking about this evening.
Well, I was on Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan. I've been on, I go on that show sometimes. I think, Chris, you've been on there too, right? On Court TV. Yeah, really nice guy, Vinny. And the idea was that they wanted to do a little bit of analysis of a recording of Stephen Stearns, who is now indicted for the murder of Madeline Soto, the little girl from what state were they from, Chris? You remember? Florida. Yeah. It was known previously that he had had all kinds of pornography of the child committing acts with him on his phone. And there was some speculation about that he was responsible for killing her. And I think at the end of the last month, I think he was indicted. So basically what happened is they released this recording with law enforcement. It's about 30 minutes long from the 27th of February, which means this is less than 24 hours after Madeline was missing. And there are going to be some things about it, as we pointed out on Court TV, that are really disturbing because, just to give you a little example, one of the things you're going to see on this video is he makes a big fuss about how when he drops Madeline off on the day she goes missing, he looks in the rearview mirror at her and she's fiddling with her school bag and making sure that she has all of her stuff. And he's looking at her like father knows best, making sure she's safe and sound. But it turns out that at the very moment that he's telling this story, law enforcement is fishing the kid's school bag out of a dumpster. Like, in other words, the mismatch between his father knows best story and the unceremonial way in which this kid was killed and her stuff was dumped is really heartbreaking. And you're going to see a lot of that. Somebody going out of his way to make himself.
You're going to hear a lot of that.
You're going to hear a lot, right? It's really going to. Well, maybe you'll see it if your imagination is strong enough. But I think that's just a little taste of the kind of sickening stuff you're going to hear here. And of course, this guy is innocent until proven guilty and so forth. But remember, he had pornography of the kid in his possession. So, if you're already loathing him, I think you'd be entitled, right? A little reasonable. And then the remainder of the show, which unfortunately I didn't hear because my segment ended and I had to take a call from somewhere else, was experts talking about the question of whether Madeline's mother was somehow complicit. And there were little things like, for example, allowing the child to sleep in the bed with him. Well, how much did she know before she allowed him to sleep in the same bed as the child and things like that? And so I think it's unraveling to be a really disturbing story, because if she did know something was going on, why didn't she do anything to help this kid? Was she scared of this guy? So I think we have a lot to talk about, but I think that this recording is going to be fascinating to go through with you guys, particularly because between me as a shrink and Chris's law enforcement background and you as someone who understands the dynamics of people affected by crime, I think you got just the right trio to go through this. I'd love Chris's thoughts on how good the questions were that were asked of this guy. And I'll be here to give some psychological insights. And I guess let's just go to town with it.
February 26th, Madeline Soto was reported missing around 8 p.m. after Stephen Stearns, her mother's boyfriend, reportedly dropped her off near Hunters Creek Middle School. And as we're going to dive right into February 27th, she has not been found. Dr. Gary said here, we're going to hear his interview with police. It's just the day after she goes missing. Chris, anything before we dive in here?
Nope. Let's go.
Right.
Case number 24-11313. Today's date is February 27, 2024. The time is 19:16 hours. We're in Kissimmee speaking with Stephen Stearns.
So she calls him Stefan, but
Okay, so I know that you already spoke to the other detective, right, about everything that kind of happened today. If you can just kind of go over it with us one more time, the timeline from like when you guys woke up and took her to school and all that.
So we woke up early. The plan was that we were going to get McDonald's breakfast on the way. So we made amazingly good time.
I don't mean to interrupt you, okay? Neither of us were here yesterday. So if you can be kind of like specific about like times and stuff like that, okay?
Woke up around 7:15, somewhere around there, which is an early start for us, but we had talked about getting McDonald's breakfast beforehand. We wanted to make good time. We did make good time. We got out the door maybe 7:30ish, 7:45ish, maybe. Got over to that area. She was asleep in the car most of the time, just snoozing until we got there. We got to McDonald's. We're close to McDonald's. I said, "You still want it?" Wasn't into the McDonald's anymore, so we continued on. And she wanted to be dropped off.
when he said that she was sleeping in the car, did they have images of her in the car? Didn't they have images of
Here, that was footage of images that were taken when the car was pulled over near the place where she was found.
Okay.
And so there was this thing of, was she drugged? Was she asleep? Was she already deceased? Etc. But you remember, Chris, they had images of like, he's like getting out of the car. Like people said he was getting out of the car, looking in the trunk.
How many kids sleep on the way to school?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I just think, I mean, already immediately, he sounds like he's making it up as he goes along. I don't know, Chris, if you have that impression too.
Yeah, I mean, just homicide 101 is to what they're doing. Is just let him talk. I'll open an open-end, just ask it. So far, they've asked an open-end question, tell us what, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, but be specific, give us dates and times. And what they want him to do is just cut loose, say whatever you need to say. Yeah. Then you can come back and say, you know what, let's talk about A, B, C, and D. So I'm curious, listening to this, about what the totality of his statement is before they start confronting him.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
A little down the ways from the school. She's got this phase that she's been into lately, very particular about what car she's getting out of in front of the school. She prefers her mom's car, but my cars are decent. I get it. It's an image thing. But that was sometime probably between 8:20 and 8:40-ish, somewhere in there. It was along the stretch of the road that on the right side that has all the communities on it.
Mm-hmm.
Before you get to the overpass. We could see the overpass from where it was.
Mm-hmm.
So it was on that side, on that stretch of road. And that's where I dropped her off. She said she was going to go wait for her friends. She was going to go find them and hang out and wait for her friends. And I asked if that was going to be okay. She said, yeah, it's fine. Kids get dropped off early enough as it is. It's not totally unusual for that to happen. It's just not usually that early that I drop her off. I do school runs every once in a while for her. I said, okay. Let her out. Have a good day. Love you. Thanks. Love you too. And I turned around and was driving away and was watching her in my rearview mirror to make sure that she was going where she was supposed to go. And she was moving in that direction, but she was rummaging around in her backpack or something. What I assumed was probably headphones or something like that. But I found out later that she forgot her phone here, so she may have been rummaging for her phone. But she was still kind of making her way towards that direction, so it looked okay. Looked like any other day. And I just continued on.
Okay. When you said you dropped her off, like in the area, kind of like where exactly did you drop her off?
So if you pull down the street going towards the school, you've got that whole strip of communities on the right side there.
Mm-hmm.
It was in that stretch of sidewalk there. We pulled in and maybe about halfway up the street or so, and she was like, right here's good.
Was it like in one of the apartment complexes, the church?
Not in, it was outside from the apartment. It was just on the sidewalk on the side of the road there, just like a tuck and roll, you know?
Okay, so like if I were to be on the road, where,
With the maps.
like, what do you remember seeing that you dropped her off at?
I remember the overpass is up ahead.
Mm-hmm.
The sidewalk was on the right, row of trees. There's, I think, a median in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was another community maybe across from that before you get to the church.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like before the church.
So Town Loop Boulevard's that street that connects to the school.
Yeah.
Is that the street that you?
Is this which one?
So that's Town Loop Boulevard, right? That's the
Loop,
one
yes. And where's the school located here?
that school's right here.
School's right there. Okay, so the school would be on the left in this case. Here's the
So you
overpass.
guys came from this side?
Yeah, we
Okay.
came from Town Loop, I think, which is Town Center. Yeah, so we made a right here and then pulled somewhere about.
So you came from Town Center and turned onto Town Loop.
Yeah, where's the church? Is this the church here?
There
I
was
would
yeah,
assume so,
that's the
yeah.
church.
Okay, so we weren't up to the church yet. So we were pulled on here and then we pulled maybe about halfway up here and I dropped her off somewhere in this area here.
And she walked from there to the school?
Yeah.
It's a pretty long way.
It's maybe a block or so, but it's not out of the ordinary for her. She likes to do that sometimes. She likes the cold weather. She was wearing her hoodie. She likes the cold.
Now, did you guys catch that he said that the reason for that was that she had a status preoccupation with the car she was being dropped off in? So he had to drop her off so that she could walk part of the way and meet with her friends. You understood him to say that, right?
Yes.
I'm just curious if either of you bought that. I thought that was a very odd story.
It's like a movie from like an Uncle Buck, you know, when he drops somebody off. Like I think he's just, yeah, at some point there were kids that were kind of like that, but I mean, unless he's driving the car from the Beverly Hillbillies, I don't really see, you know, that being a, yes, I think that's
an odd story, right? And then he says that he's looking in the rearview mirror and just because he says, I love you. And she says, I love you. And then she gets out and he's looking in the mirror and watching her with her bag and rummaging like he's so caring, you know, and then but it's just I don't know, Chris, maybe I'm reading into it too much. I wonder though, if it struck you as a strange explanation for why nobody at the school is going to see you dropping this kid off.
Well, first of all, this is the second interview, it sounds like. The first interview was the day before because the detectives they say, look, we weren't here yesterday. Start from square one. So that tells us he's already rehearsed overnight, potentially what he's going to regurgitate here. Okay? And the first part of this, I'm curious. I couldn't make out if he says, and Josh, maybe we can play it, you know, mark where we're at here. Go back to the very beginning where I think he says, we woke up early. And then he gives a time 0700, 0715. Okay, so my question is, who's we in my mind? Okay, is it we, my wife or my girlfriend and I? We, she, Madeline and I? We, my girlfriend, Madeline and I? Who is we? And so then up to this point, the whatever it is, 4 minutes or 2 minutes and 5 seconds into this thing, the only thing I hear from the detectives that I would have done differently is only one at a time talking to this guy. When you get too many chefs in the kitchen, then you got one person cutting onions and you got one person cutting tomatoes. Okay. When you're not making pasta. Okay? And so you've got to control the conversation by an agreement between the two investigators. You're going to lead, I'm going to take notes, and then we'll circle back. And that's how you conduct a really solid interview. But this is out in the field, so they're obviously showing him something. You can hear it because he's pointing to a map of some sort that they're showing him, either photographs or something, because he's saying, no, right here, and he's pointing into it.
Yeah, and you can hear the background noise, traffic and helicopters.
Yeah, they're out in the street.
Chris picked up on that use of the word we. When I was on Court TV, I was on with Susan Constantine, who's a sort of analyzes language and tells you what you could pick up on. And one of the things she pointed out was that he has very strange use of pronouns where he never says I. He always seems to say we, or he doesn't even give a pronoun. He just says went to the store, went to the, and she said that she has found that to be characteristic of people who don't wish to own what it is that they did or to place themselves in the situation. So there's almost like a divorcing of responsibility from the self to not say I. And I think that's very interesting. And if you pay attention, he does say I when he's talking about all the good things he supposedly did, looking in the mirror and saying I loved you and all that. But when it comes to the things that are suspicious or being made up, it's always we, or there's no pronoun, or that. And I thought that was very clever of her to pick up.
Yeah.
Up around 7:15, somewhere around there.
Does he start with woke up?
There's no pronoun, just says woke up.
Right. So go back to the very beginning.
Case number 24-11313. Today's date is February 27, 2024. The time is 19:16 hours. We're in Kissimmee speaking with Stephen Stearns. Okay, so I know that you already spoke to the other detective, right, about everything that kind of happened today. If you can.
Good catch on that second interview, because they have this touted as the very first interview.
Just kind of go over it with us one more time, the timeline from like when you guys woke up. And
just stop right there. I want you to go over it with us one more time.
Right.
So this is a repeated interview. So that in a suspect's mind is to his advantage.
Yeah.
He's processing the first interview that if we would have heard it, okay, would have been much different than this. In fact, it would have been a little bit more problematic, I would submit.
He does sound rehearsed sort of here.
Definitely.
Like, if I'm this guy, the very first interview that you're having, you're terrified. I'm sure you could probably hear different affects in his voice, different pausings, and taking a long time. So very good call and good catch.
You get Barry Morphew that steps out of the truck and he goes, "Was it a lion?"
Right.
That's the first interview.
and took her to school and all that.
So we woke up early. The plan was that we were going to get McDonald's breakfast on the way. So we woke up early.
The plan was we were going to get McDonald's. So first thing first, that's deception in of itself. He is drawing the victim next to him, okay, which he thinks will protect him.
Right.
Okay? And that principle in of itself is problematic for him, because what he doesn't understand as he starts to lay the foundation about their behavior, okay, it actually unravels his behavior.
Yeah. So you're saying, Chris, that you think there's some truth to what Susan Constantine was saying, that there's an attempt to make it seem like it wasn't a solo thing that I kind of did in a nasty way, but that we were out. She had some agency. She wanted to go. But it's a little bit of like externalizing. Is that
what he's doing here is like what any one of these suspects does.
Yeah.
Okay? She's already dead.
Yeah.
And so in his mind, he has to keep her alive. So he projects her as being alive, and he projects her as making decisions while she's alive. And oh, by the way, all I did was drop her off. Okay. And so he's projecting that as if, she's going along with the McDonald's thing. She's going along with the ride. And then when I looked over at her, this comforting care and this feeling, she was asleep.
Right.
Okay. I noticed she was asleep. That is way too much information. And it's information that wasn't solicited by the investigators. Why does he interject that?
You mean it feels defensive?
Well, she's dead. Yeah. He sees her dead.
Yeah.
In the car. So to him, I got to make an excuse for that. I got to tell this detective, well, I saw her sleep. Okay.
Do you think he's fluffing it up by saying I was going to take her to get McDonald's breakfast?
He's filling airtime because he's had time to think about it. This is the second interview. He's had time to think about what he said the first time. And the reason they did this second interview is to lock him in even further and to get him to lie even more.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is strategic and good police work. So
interesting. But you don't think, Chris, that it's possible that he realized that they could have been looking at cell phone pings or something as he was driving up the highway to go where she was dumped, and he had to explain while they were on that highway that he was taking her to McDonald's or whatever it is instead of the school, because he's driving in a place that is not usual for the morning when he's supposed to be taking her to school. So the story sounds like a cover story for why they're on the highway driving around, and then he turns the car around to go towards Kissimmee. And they're like, and you're going to see they confront him about it because it doesn't make any sense. The McDonald's is in the other direction.
What I think he's thinking about is, what did I say the first time?
Right.
That's where his mind is during this conversation, in my opinion. I've had many murderers that you lock them in on one statement, and then you come back the next day and say, you know what, can you go over this one more time? I'm a little confused, and let them then regurgitate, and what you can see it happening real time in their mind and their movements, their body language, etc., where, they're trying to recreate, okay, one, I know what happened, so I can't go there. Two, I know what I said yesterday, I think I remember. And now three, I've got to repeat everything that I said yesterday, almost verbatim, to prevent what I know what really happened. And so this guy's juggling 3 plates in his head, and he's spinning all 3 of them simultaneously. And now when they hit him with, evidence that says, hey, well, like what you're talking about, Gary, when they hit him with evidence that says, hey, this doesn't line up, now he's got a 4th plate that he has to spin.
Right. Exactly. Okay. Exactly. I agree 100%. And he's bad at it. I think he has an empathy problem. He can't, like I always say, he can't feel. You could tell he's making it up.
Let's play it from here for the audience, and that way we can even refresh our own memory, as we go through this, right?
The timeline from like when you guys woke up and took her to school and all that.
So we woke up early. The plan was that we were going to get McDonald's breakfast on the way. So we made amazingly good time.
I don't mean to interrupt you, okay? Neither of us were here yesterday. So if you can be kind of like specific about like times and stuff like that, okay?
Woke up around 7:15, somewhere around there, which is an early start for us, but we had talked about getting McDonald's breakfast beforehand. We wanted to make good time. We did make good time. We got out the door maybe 7:30ish, 7:45ish, maybe. Got over to that area. She was asleep in the car most of the time, just snoozing until we got there. We got to McDonald's. We're close to McDonald's. I said, you still want it? Wasn't into the McDonald's anymore. So we continued on, and she wanted to be dropped off a little down the ways from the school. She's got this phase that she's been into lately, very particular about what car she's getting out of in front of the school. She prefers her mom's car, but my cars are G's. I get it. It's an image.
Notice this whole conversation is her idea.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's her idea. And the detective started off with, you and your girlfriend, give us timelines. She doesn't say her girlfriend. She says something to the effect of where she brings in the girlfriend in the very beginning of this conversation. Okay, correct timelines. What were you guys thinking? That kind of thing. Okay, and he shifts the conversation away from the girlfriend, i.e., the mom of Madeline, and into Madeline and he in the car. At this point in the conversation, I don't even know if the mother's in the car. Do you guys?
I don't think.
But listen to this.
He never indicates that she was in the car.
Right, but later on, the mother puts herself in the car. That they dropped themselves off together. Remember, they dropped her off together.
Yeah, I remember her. I remember her saying that they. I don't know if they were. Maybe you remember, but I don't know if they said specifically on this trip, but that they would do it together.
Right. So let's go back and listen very carefully what the directions are.
Today's date is February 27, 2024. The time is 19:16 hours. We're in Kissimmee speaking with Stephen Stearns. Okay, so I know that you already spoke to the other detective, right, about everything that kind of happened today. If you can just kind of go over it with us one more time, the timeline from like when you guys woke up and took her to school and all that.
She's talking about the girlfriend and him. When you guys woke up and took her to school. Back up and you'll hear it.
The timeline from like when you guys woke up and took her to school and all that.
When you guys woke up and took her to school.
Right. And so now this is where he interjects we, okay, meaning the concept we. Okay? And then he shifts the conversation into these are all Madeline's ideas. We're going to go to McDonald's. We kind of talked about it earlier, yada, yada. And then, let's see how it unfolds.
So we woke up early. The plan was that we were going to get McDonald's breakfast on the way. So we made amazingly good time.
I don't mean to interrupt you, okay? Neither of us were here yesterday. So if you can be kind of like specific about like times and stuff like that, okay?
Woke up around 7:15, somewhere around there, which is an early start for us, but we had talked about getting McDonald's breakfast beforehand. We wanted to make good time. We did make good time. We got out the door maybe 7:30ish, 7:45ish, maybe. Got over to that area. She was asleep in the car most of the time, just snoozing until we got there. We got to McDonald's. We're close to McDonald's. I said, "You still want it?" Wasn't into the McDonald's anymore. So continued on, and she wanted to be dropped off a little down the ways from the school. She's got this phase that she's been into lately, very particular about what car she's getting out of in front of the school. She prefers her mom's car, but my cars are empties. I get it. It's an image thing. But that was sometime probably between 8:20 and 8:40ish, somewhere in there. It was along the stretch of the road that on the right side that has all the communities on it. Before you get to the overpass. We could see the overpass from where it was. So it was on that side, on that stretch of road. And that's where I dropped her off. She said she was going to go wait for her friends.
He says that's where I dropped her off.
Now it's an I.
Yeah. So he's gone singular here now. Okay. But what's interesting in this is he gives this time frame very specifically, and so he's had time to think about this overnight. He wakes up at between 7 and 7:15. They make really good time. They're out of the door at 07:35 with a plan that belongs to Madeline. It's her idea. We're going to go to McDonald's. Okay. And then I don't want to be seen in your car, i.e. mom's car. So you're going to drop me off at, this location that she somehow, has agreed to. Oh yeah, this is a good spot here. Let me out. And that is between 08:20 and 08:40. So from 7:35 to 8:20 in the morning, he drives to this McDonald's, and then he drives over to this location, but he can't remember exactly, where, there's a 20-minute gap here that is really important to understand as an investigator, because that amount of time is probably why they're going to go to the specifics about tell us exactly where you dropped her off.
When they go into the specifics, it's important to realize that where she was dropped off was on the other side of an overpass.
Well, right. And they have the advantage. The investigators have the advantage because they have the first interview that they locked him in on yesterday, the day before.
Right.
And that's why she reiterated to him, hey, we weren't here yesterday to hear what you had to say. So let's go ahead. Let's go through this one more time. But what happened is that evening or that morning when these detectives who were asked and assigned, hey, go interview him, lock him into a second statement, they debriefed what his first statement was. And they have it in their head, okay, exactly what he said, because that one's recorded too. And they watched it and said, okay, he said, and they got their notebooks there. And that first statement is right there in their notebook. And that's how they're going to be able to come back and confront him with, hey, well, what about this? What about that?
Yeah, but if we put I'm a very big fan of common sense, and if we put our common sense hat on here, I think both of you would agree, as people, who have kids, wouldn't you agree that it would be very strange if you were the kind of father that was like so careful that you were looking in the rearview mirror and making sure she had her bag and this, that, and the other thing, but you drop her in a place that you don't meticulously know or feel comfortable with? I mean, it doesn't match. You're not going to drop some kid in some dumpy overpass area and be like, now you walk to school, honey, you'll be safe. I'm going to drive off now to protect you from the other kids seeing my crappy car. Like, that's a ridiculous story. You would say that's not safe. I'm sorry. Like, or at least take you right to the edge of the school and let you out. But like, I'm not going to drop you blocks away. And if he did feel comfortable with it, why can't he meticulously recreate the details of what it was, what the place was? Because he's dodgy with it. Oh, I think there's a church there and a overpass and a thing. Well, if you weren't completely comfortable and familiar, I don't think you'd drop your kid there. I really don't. I mean, maybe that's just me, but
well, he's selling a story here,
yeah,
right? And there's 5 steps to a sale: prospect, personalize, promote, create, and close.
right.
Those are all 5 steps. And remember, he's selling murder here. He's selling, I'm not going to prison for anything because I murdered this child. So he's got, in his mind, he's got to sell as many details as he can that we call that, right? DLR, doesn't look right or doesn't sound right. There's too much information, to your point about common sense. This guy's offering way too much information where, the average person would go, well, that's weird. You dropped her off underneath the bridge by the railroad tracks and the homeless near, Parker Center, downtown Los Angeles. I'm teasing, seriously? Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll buy that. Let me put it on my notebook. And I used to tell suspects, I said, do you see any neon lights on my forehead here? And they'd go, no. I said, okay, I'm glad it's not flashing stupid, because I didn't think you were either. So let's continue on with our conversation, shall we? They catch that pretty quickly.
I also find it fascinating because this is the second time he's being questioned without a lawyer, and he cannot lawyer. I mean, he can legally lawyer up,
Sure.
But if he lawyers up, I mean, they're already on him, right? But he thinks in his mind that he still has a chance to explain this away without a lawyer. And they're taking advantage of that, which they should. And that's great police work too. And I find that because most people, when you get confronted by the cops, you're like, well, I probably should have a lawyer. In this situation, asking for a lawyer might as well be admitting to guilt in a sense, to at least to the public, the mother, the family, and the police. Now, obviously, he has to go to court, but
I love the idea that this guy's walking around the car, kicking the tires while simultaneously opening the door, trying the window, and it doesn't go up. And he goes, oh, nothing to see here. Let's go over here and let me show you the engine. And he lifts the hood. There's no motor. But he says, what the heck? Yeah. There was a motor yesterday.
Right, exactly.
Where's the motor?
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, no, it's true. But I think he thinks he's smarter than everybody, and that you actually believe this.
Well, he doesn't have much of a choice, I don't think.
It's ridiculous. I mean, it reminds me of Koberger, with the stargazing. It feels like a person who thinks you believe this stuff.
Yeah. Wait, do you guys hear the clown car? Anybody hear that coming?
Yeah. All right, let's keep going.
Go find them and hang out and wait for her friends. And I asked if that was going to be okay. She said, yeah, it's fine. Kids get dropped off early enough as it is. It's not totally unusual for that to happen. It's just not.
There you go again. It's not totally. Chris is completely right. He's selling murder any way that he can. I mean, that was a great way to put it.
And he's to Gary's point, he's compassionate. Are you sure is this a good area?
Okay?
Are you good with this area here? Is this fine? Oh yeah, it's fine. Okay, good. And forget the that guy over there getting the Narcan. Just ignore him. Go to school. I'll see you in a couple hours.
Right, it's odd. And oh, you got your bag, honey. You looking in your bag, and the bag is in a dumpster.
He's a carnival barker.
Yeah.
You know, but think about that contrast that the kid's stuff is in the dumpster, and he's
Well,
talking about it like she's, like he's like the most loving guy. Oh, honey, I love you. I love you too. Like as he's telling this, if he's guilty, this kid is already decaying.
Right.
He's dead and decaying. He's murdered her. He's taken her stuff and thrown it in the trash bin, and then is telling this story with no compunction. Like he just killed a fly or something.
It says something about a person that if the cops were to go, you know what, we believe you, and he would be willing to go on with his life as a free, probably to do this again elsewhere.
I remember once I interviewed an incarcerated sex offender, and he was very callous and had no feelings at all. And he said, touching children is like eating potato chips. You can't have just one.
Right.
I thought that was really disgusting, but I understood what he meant.
Yeah.
It's like once they've given in to the act, they're just going to keep going and going and going until they're incarcerated. You know that, Chris. I mean, you don't cure them.
No,
and they rack up high victim counts. I don't believe this is this guy's first rodeo. I really don't. I mean, he was keeping extensive videos of her performing acts, I assume, on him. I mean, I don't know exactly what he was filming, but they were kind of pornographic. So he was either making her do things or she was performing acts on him. And, it really tells you something about like this guy must be a pretty seasoned pervert. Because I mean, don't you think, Chris, he has the flavor of someone who's been around the block, is keeping trophies brazenly on his phone that he's walking around with? I mean, he's lost control of it, I think.
Yeah. And that's why we register these guys in a society, and God help us if we ever stop.
Yes.
And make it a normal behavior, because that's just the floodgates, and we've just seen the beginning.
It's disgusting.
Usually that early that I drop her off, I do school runs every once in a while for her. I said, okay, let her out. Have a good day. Love you. Thanks. Love you too. And I turned around and was driving away and was watching her in my rearview mirror to make sure that she was going where she was supposed to go. And she was moving in that direction, but she was.
So this is how calculating this guy is, right? This is how he's selling, oh, by the way, you now know that the windows are broken, and, it's now the Fred Flintstone mobile where you have to stick your feet through the floorboard and move the car. Okay. This guy is now telling you, I'm looking in the mirror, just making sure, okay, that he's okay. You've got to be kidding me.
Rummaging around in her backpack or something.
Really quick, let me go back here just 1 second, because at this point, when you said he goes to a singular, now the mother asks him to take her by himself.
She's going to find them and hang out and wait for her friends. And I asked if that was going to be okay. She said, yeah, it's fine. Kids get dropped off early enough as it is. It's not totally unusual for that to happen. It's just not usually that early that I drop her off. I do school runs every once in a while for her. I said, okay, let her out. Have a good day. Love you. Thanks. Love you too. And I turned around and was driving away and was watching her in my rearview mirror to make sure that she was going where she was supposed to go. And she was moving in that direction, but she was rummaging around in her backpack or something. What I assumed was probably headphones or something like that. I find out later that she forgot her phone here, so she may have been rummaging for her phone. But she was still kind of making her way towards that direction, so it looked okay. Looked like any other day. And I just continued on.
Okay. When you said you dropped her off, like in the area, kind of like where exactly did you drop her off?
So if you pull down the street going towards the school, you've got that whole strip of communities on the right side there. It was in that stretch of sidewalk there. We pulled in and maybe about halfway up the street or so, and she was like, right here's good.
Was it like in one of the apartment complexes, the church?
Not in, it was outside from the apartment. It was just on the sidewalk on the side of the road there, just like a tuck and roll,
Okay, so like if I were to be on the road, where, like, what do you remember seeing that you dropped her off at?
I remember the overpass is up ahead. Sidewalk was on the right, row of trees. There's, I think, a median in the middle. And then there was another community maybe across from that before you get to the church. So it was like before the church.
So Town Loop Boulevard's that street that connects to the school.
Yeah.
Is that the street that you?
Is this which one?
So that's Town Loop Boulevard, right? That's the one
yes. And where's the school located here?
School's right here.
School's right there. Okay, so the school would be on the left in this case. Here's the overpass.
So you guys came from this side?
Yeah, we came from Town Loop, I think, which is Town Center. Yeah, so we made a right here and then pulled somewhere about.
So you came from Town Center and turned onto Town Loop.
Yeah, where's the church? Is this the church here?
There is that's the church.
Okay, so we weren't up to the church yet. So we were pulled on here, and then we pulled maybe about halfway up here, and I dropped her off somewhere in this.
So far, there's nothing wrong with, from my opinion, nothing wrong with the way the PD's interviewing, except for the gal should have maintained the conversation, and the guy should have just zippity doodad his mouth. But it worked, unfortunately, for the bad guy. So, that's a lesson learned later on, because you hear the female detective repeat where he left off to get him back into the conversation, continuing to move forward, where she says something. You hear her say, okay, well, let's, from here, move forward. And because he wants to show him the photograph or the map or whatever. What they're doing here is they're locking him into geographic locations so that, because they have additional information, that they're going to now come along at some point and, come at him with it. And that's going to throw his rhythm off. And he's going to have to go into what we used to call the curly shuffle, where, he's going to have to go, where do I go from here? Okay. Remember the Three Stooges and the curly shuffle?
They made that song, the curly shuffle. Whoop, whoop,
that's what they call it. And that's what he's going to try to do here. But that could have come from the detective, the female detective, who sounds like the lead here. And the second guy is her partner. That's just.
Well, from what I heard, the snippets of this I heard on Court TV, what I remember is that ultimately he's the one who is going to wind up confronting this guy with the contradiction.
Yeah, he's the bad guy.
Wind up a good cop, bad cop situation. So I don't know if that was intentional, or maybe they thought that having a female officer, given that the dynamics of this are him having a close relationship with a woman and a close relationship with a female child, they might have thought that there was something important about having a female interview him. It could just be a complete coincidence. I don't know what you think about that.
I think it was tactically designed.
Yeah, probably. It's sort of like in a courtroom when it's a good idea to have a female attorney interview a woman who is being is on the stand about something like sexual assault. It's sensitive to do that. It doesn't look like you're badgering the person. You're understanding. You're being sensitive. And I wonder if it wasn't intentional. I think that's true. And then they have him kind of confront.
Yeah, I mean, we used to have whenever you do that game, whenever I would take a break and say, why don't you go outside for a little while and relax? Okay, let me talk to the guy. Okay, right. Well, in there with the suspect, and then when your partner leaves, and it was all theatrics. And you'd lean over and go, that guy's just crazy. He's just not wrapped real tight. Tonight. Yeah, I don't know what his problem is. Maybe he's having a fight with his wife or something, but excuse him. Let's just look past that. And so what happened again? Where were you?
Right.
You see where that can go?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
This area here.
And she walked from there to the school?
Yeah.
It's a pretty long way.
It's maybe a block or so, but it's not out of the ordinary for her. She likes to do that sometimes. She likes the cold.
It was a half mile. It wasn't a block.
Weather. She was wearing her hoodie. She likes the cold walks.
So you dropped her off near Lilac? Does that sound right?
Yeah, it wasn't at a cross street. It was just a bit of the sidewalk there.
So did you merge into the sidewalk, or did you stop in the middle of the street, or?
I just pulled over to the sidewalk there. Let her hop out.
How often do you drop her off?
This might be the 5th or 6th time I've ever done it.
Okay. And when you drop her off, where do you normally drop her off at?
Normally down the street from the school. She requests that a lot.
Like the same area or somewhere else?
Especially if it's sometimes in the church parking lot, sometimes just wherever she tells us to let her out. As long as it's close, you know.
So it's halfway between Town Loop and Town Center and the church?
Yeah, it's just in this stretch right here. Like we got about maybe halfway up and it was there.
The McDonald's that you guys were going to stop at, did you pull into the plaza at any point?
No, she 86'd the idea before we even got there.
What do you mean by 86?
Poo-pooed the idea. Didn't want it anymore.
Okay.
Wasn't in the mood anymore.
At any point while you were driving to the school, did you make a U-turn?
Yeah, I tried to sell her on McDonald's one more time because I was still kind of hungry. But
Yeah, you tried to sell her on McDonald's again.
Okay, so again, I'm batting 1,000 here on this guy, and I haven't even heard this tape yet. So,
As we're gonna stop at, did you pull into the plaza at any point?
no, she 86'd the idea before we even got there.
What do you mean by 86?
Poo-pooed the idea. Didn't want it anymore.
Okay.
Wasn't in the mood anymore.
At any point while you were driving to the school, did you make a U-turn?
Yeah, I tried to sell her on McDonald's one more time because I was still kind of hungry. But at that point,
he's trying to sell him on this story.
Yeah.
Day 2. Okay. Day 2. I mean, remember that morning they had a plan. They were going to wake up early, which they did at 7:15. They made great time just to get to the McDonald's. And in the middle of the drive, or at least close to the McDonald's, it was her idea that says, you know what? I don't want to go to McDonald's anymore. Okay. But it's his idea that says, no, come on, let's go to McDonald's. And I'm trying to sell her on the idea of going to McDonald's, but she wants to go to school. Okay. So he's doing the curly shuffle here. It's and this is good police work. They're locking him down into these statements. It's good work.
And if you see me drop off, I'm just listening to everybody's levels that way.
Yeah.
One doesn't drown out the other.
Where did you make that U-turn at?
actually, the school not the school parking lot, the church parking lot. I pulled into that, turned around and pulled back out. Did a UE there and went back to the McDonald's. And she still wasn't having it.
What's that?
Too much detail. Too many details. Deception. Liars like this, they give you too much detail. I turned around like this. Well, I didn't actually. I turned around like this, and then we went into McDonald's, or we were going towards McDonald's. I mean, there's just TMI, too much information, and that's because he's trying to, sell. But they're not buying it.
Nah, I don't. Yeah, it doesn't sound like it.
That's when we came back. See, the McDonald's is on the same town loop or town center. It connects to the same road that the
school's on.
Yeah, so it's like
Now think about that. He says town loop, town center, town road. He's trying to give us 3 descriptions of where the McDonald's is located. That's way too much information. All he says, a truthful person would say, the McDonald's right there. The McDonald's.
It's on 5th Street.
The McDonald's, we go there every morning, right, or every other morning, whatever. We've been there 1,000 times, that McDonald's. Right. You're an investigator. You work these streets around here, that McDonald's. Okay? Right. Instead of, the one on the road, the one on the loop, the one in the circle.
And they let him fumble over it too.
Absolutely.
They just sit there and let him trip over himself.
Yeah, you hand him the piece of paper that says I'm stupid. Here, tell me what you want to sell me.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I think also, Chris, you'd agree that when people tell the truth, there tends to be a lot more sensory information. It was a little cold. I remember. It was a noisy street. That kind of thing. This is a lot more of a description, like you're watching a movie where you're not immersed in it It's more, but I have found that when people are giving an honest account, there's a lot of that. The little details are sensory in nature. Have you found that to be true too?
Yeah, that's a great point, Doc. And I think, they flow. The truth flows.
Yeah.
And it's very consistent. And because we know that this is the second interview, he's got jeopardy. And so he's trying to hide the secret life. And you've got to get into that by, getting into those minutia details and asking that principal, tell me about your life. And now they're investigating the information that's presenting itself out of his mouth. And they're not buying it. You can hear it in them because they're just asking specific pinpointed questions. Where were you? Show me. I'd like to see that, that kind of concept. So they're locking him in. That's what they're doing. They're locking him down.
Straight shot.
So you guys came from, just so I can kind of get a good visualization, Town Center, and where did you come from, Town Center?
Town Center. So where's the McDonald's? I'm so bad at reading these. I'm sorry.
Hey, you get exactly what you just said. Where's the McDonald's? I'm so bad at reading these. He knows where McDonald's is, just like they do.
Well, how did he drive her there? He didn't know about it.
Twice.
Yeah.
So we
This
came.
is all Town Center.
So we came across on Town Loop, I believe. Is that the school that is that the road that the school is on?
You wouldn't say we made remarkably good time if you weren't familiar with how long it normally takes to get there.
Correct. Yeah, it's a good catch. Right. And it's we.
It's
right.
We.
This is Town Center. So you said you were on Town Center and then you made a right on Town Loop, which is the one that takes you to the school.
Yes, correct.
Right.
I think yes.
But what I'm saying is before Town Loop, for Town Center, what street did you take?
I'm so sorry. I'm bad with the streets around here.
How do you usually get to the school?
That's convenient, right?
I just take John Young
and the cop knows of the nose.
And wait till I see the McDonald's and make a left there, and then follow that around, and that goes straight into the road that the school is on. Just use the landmarks. I don't memorize the street.
He uses the McDonald's as a landmark for directions.
names.
Is that JYP?
Yeah, so this is JYP.
I mean, at the McDonald's, you turn right?
And then you said you made a left at the McDonald's? So that's Jungyoung Parkway. You're going north on Jungyoung.
McDonald's, and then go around, and then that shoots straight into the road that she's on.
Okay, because
I believe that's the correct road.
Yeah, well, that's the fastest way to get there. But you told me you came from Town Center and Town Loop.
I'm sorry. I don't know the street names.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So no, that's okay.
But apparently Madeline knows the street that she wants, and he knows how to get to that street that she wants.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah. Whoops.
So now that we know that you came from Jungyoung Parkway and you made a left on Town Loop, so you passed the McDonald's.
Yeah, that was when she said no to McDonald's at first.
Okay. So you guys keep on going on Town Loop.
Yeah. But at that point, we still had a lot of time to kill very early.
So what did you guys do?
That's an interesting statement.
That's a very interesting word to choose that morning, the day after her murder. We have a lot of time to kill.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting, that is an interesting choice of words for a missing young lady that now the evidence is pointing towards she's already deceased from the day before. Yeah, so far I've not. I think the detectives are doing a great job here locking him down, and they may have some kind of have already triggered each other through a signal of some sort. You know, who's going to take over the next piece of the interview here, and that's what we're hearing from him.
Well, when I heard this on Court TV, I didn't have the continuity. I only heard snippets, and so it wasn't clear that there was actually an artfulness to how they were doing this.
Mm-hmm.
But now that I'm hearing the whole thing, it does look like they weren't fooled and they knew exactly what they were doing, but they were sort of playing the fool. They were dummying up to sort of let him trip on himself. And they were actually playing off of each other quite well. And we'll see when he starts getting confronted. I mean, it's amazing. We've only gone about 8 minutes through this, but as it progresses, we'll see that the contradictions start to come out. Also, I'll tell you that another one of these disturbing phrases he uses, which I talked about on Court TV, is you're going to see that he says, "I'm sorry, I'm not a morning person," like about why he's foggy headed. And I said, that should be the title of a book, because if you spell morning, MOURNING, he isn't a morning person, meaning you couldn't care less. This kid is dead. And, it's disturbing when you realize, because I do think, Chris, even though it's not intentional, that there are phrases that are like insensitive. We know we've interviewed many victims, and we have to walk on eggshells to not use phrases that could be construed as hurtful. They don't like, there's certain language that people who've been through this would never use. It hurts. And he's sort of callous in the way that he talks, I think.
Well, yeah, and it's important, right, for
Mm-hmm.
the audience to recognize this guy has already killed this child. This child
if she's guilty, she is already dead, I think, at the time of this interview. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, she's gone. He's allegedly been arrested for doing it. So everything that's coming out of his mouth right now is calculated.
Is he under arrest here?
No,
not yet.
No, they took a long time to indict him for murder.
Absolutely. You want it because what they wanted to do was what they did here. And this is probably only a few or one of many statements that he probably made that they have him locked in on that we're hearing in the public. But I think it's a great job so far. And the fact that he's choosing, this type of verbiage, again, he's walking around the car, and kicking the stone tires and saying, "Hey, can't you, there's air in these tires, you guys, come on. There's air in these tires." Right. And the cops are looking at it going, "No, those are the real deal. Those are stone."
Right.
Well, Chris, Betty Holland, the police chief in Kissimmee.
Mm-hmm.
And when they indicted him, because I have it here because I think it's very powerful, she said, "The evidence shows an individual that was entrusted to keep Madeline safe made calculated moves to dispose Madeline's belongings and place her body in a wooded area before she was ever reported missing."
Yep.
So it isn't only that she's dead, but everything about her has been tossed into the dumpster and she's been dumped in the woods. And then he says, "Gee, we better call, and she's not coming home." So that it's really disturbing, Chris. I mean, that sounds to me profoundly calculated, and and I think a person who has the ability to shut down any emotion at all. The other thing is, he doesn't sound sad. He's not trying to even fake being in tears, being devastated, remembering that he's the one who dropped her off and then she went missing. Oh, was it my fault? I mean,
yeah, you would have tremendous guilt.
You always blame yourself. If you're a child, if something happens to your child, you always think, what else could I have done? Why wasn't I there? Why didn't I protect them? I was the person who did this. The last thing I said to them was this. It should have been this. Why didn't I say I love you more? Why didn't I? You know what I'm saying? You go through that. You play the I hate myself game. And I think that this person isn't sounding like that. He just sounds like he's making an effort to sound like, I didn't do anything wrong. I loved her.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole thing is he has rehearsed in his head, right, Gary, what he's going to say in terms of, okay, what's a narrative to start with? And he's so confident. The child killers are extremely confident in deception because they have been doing it for so long in terms of, their victimology, their grooming tactics, and then their scare tactics, how they scare the children not to say anything for so long. Mm-hmm. And then one day that dam breaks and then they realize, okay, I need to go to step B. And those that go to step B, right, they kill. And to your point, to eliminate the witness, which you've written about and are an authority on. And this guy is classic. He's a classic child killer in terms of his verbal, presentation here. I think the officers are doing a masterful job of just letting him, here's the horse's reins, jump on and run. Okay. And if when you get to McDonald's, let us know when you're at McDonald's. When you get to the bridge, let us know when you're at the bridge. Okay. And all of that is really good police work from what I'm hearing here. And this is my opinion, in my opinion only, that so far, this is gonna play into the courtroom after they show her body being recovered, and then they're going to say, well, let's just press play. Detective, did you take this statement from Stefan? Yes, I did. Well, let's play it for the jury. Go ahead, Josh.
Without hearing, towards the end of this, it does kind of feel like they're setting up a box with him in the middle of that box, and they're just, and that box is going to get smaller and smaller, right, and then the lid's going to go on it. But like I said, I haven't heard the end of this, but I'm assuming that he's going to start sounding more whiny and desperate and don't you believe me type.
He's always a victim.
Yeah,
he's the one who's but I think, Chris, what you're describing is basically the technique of giving somebody enough rope to hang themselves.
Yes.
I mean, that's really what you're saying, right? I mean, it's like that. So you think that what they did, you don't think that it's a reflection on that they don't have a lot of questions for him or whatever. You think that they're intentionally keeping quiet so that he just rambles on until he backs himself into a wall.
Remember, the best interview is when you hear nothing out of the detective.
Like a blank tabula rasa kind of thing.
Where you just the way I used to start interviews, and I still do it today with suspects. In fact, I was, as you know, I was at the court today, and I was in the jail yesterday interviewing a guy, and I started it with, so how did you get here? Just like that, and just see where he goes or she goes. Okay. Yeah. Now, with this kind of situation, you want to start with, do you know why we're here?
Yeah.
Okay. And with this guy is, oh yeah, I want to help you find Maddie, and thank you so much for your help, etc. Okay, well, tell me what happened that day. Well, tell me what happened yesterday. And by the way, let's be specific. I need dates, times, so that I can correlate that to a timeline. Oh, okay, detective. Okay, great. Go ahead. Tell me, Stefan, what time did you wake up? And I'll just go ahead and listen. Boom. Let them run. And every once in a while, you stop them and you say, was it, this corner here that you're talking about? Yeah. Okay. What McDonald's? Oh, this one. Okay. Well, where did you drive in? Okay, great. Thank you. Keep going.
Well, that's what's going to happen. You're going to see it, Chris,
okay.
In real time, the collapse of the narrative.
And
because I was shown that little piece on Court TV, so I know that you're going to be.
Okay.
There are some psychological tests that have a lot, I won't say which, but that have a lot of interview questions on them. And you purposely score the first half and the second half separately because it's understood that most people can't sustain a fake story for that long. So you compare them and it shows they present one way when they're energized and focused, and now you've broken them down. The second half shows what they're really like, right? But a person tells the truth.
It's a bunch of letters, Josh, the test.
Oh, really?
I can't tell you which test it is, but it's very, but there are tests that are used like that and I think it's very important because when a person's telling the truth, it's just not going to collapse. The facts are the facts. There may be slight details that change. Oh, that's right. I thought I saw this person wearing this color and they're wearing that color, but the major details don't collapse, particularly with a traumatic event like the day that your kid went missing.
Yeah, I mean, is anybody else sick of hearing about McDonald's already? I mean, it's just like, over and over and over. Yeah, you're right. The details, and it's going to be interesting going forward to hear these details start to collapse.
That's the kind of guy, if you would have said to him, well, what kind of food does she like at McDonald's? What would she order? He'll tell you. He'll fill in that gap. Oh, she orders the number 7.
Yeah.
Okay. Because
Extra
it's irrelevant.
Right. He'll know the answer to that, but he won't know where McDonald's is.
Right.
Because that goes directly against his actual story or what actually happened.
If the story would have kept going, to your point, Josh, if the story would have kept going, now he's either A, has to go inside and order, or B, go through the drive-through.
Or go to Burger King.
And that means he could be on video, or he's going to have to tell the detectives, because a smart detective is going to say, so what did you guys order?
Yeah, why? Yeah, exactly. Or why'd you go that way? Well, we were going to McDonald's, but we didn't actually end up going to McDonald's. Well, why not? She changed her mind. Well, you can't ask her if she changed her mind because she's not there.
Yeah. So
But he blames her for it.
Yeah. Prospect, personalize, promote, create, and close.
U-turn, came back, tried to do the McDonald's thing again. She didn't want it.
So where did you, one more time, where did you do the U-turn at?
It probably was right by the church because it was still way too early for school. So it was on that stretch of road. I mean, they had the meeting there and a separation. So that left turn where the church is, you could make a U-turn there.
You notice he said probably.
I was thinking that as well.
That's a doubting statement.
Really, there's no probablys about it. I mean, he knows where he went and he knows what he was doing. So all these little insertions of like, it's like somebody who's they're wanting to walk through a door, but they keep their foot, in place, just in case they don't go all the way through it or something like that. He's really leaving.
This is good stuff for an audience to hear because especially in the true crime community, hey, my uncle's a heart surgeon, so, I'm a heart surgeon. Okay.
Right.
This is really important to understand because this guy has already killed a child. And listen how masterfully he's trying to sell the death of Madeline because he has calculated out that he has no other option but to keep the facade moving. And this is why when you're dealing with those who have harmed children, which I am an expert in child killers, I have testified as an expert, been voir dired as an expert in the death of children and those who select them. Okay. Now, those who are on YouTube, if you're an expert because you heard me say, I'm an expert, well, okay, I'm not going to bless you today. I'm teasing. But you have a lot of credentials now. Yeah. Okay, so run with them. Okay, wherever you are around the world. Okay. That said, if this guy is that calculating, imagine a child in his presence that he has victimized, groomed up to this point. Okay. And then put yourself in Maddie's position the day he decides, I have to kill her. Imagine how calculating he was up to that moment of her death. And this is what this guy's going through here, as if it's just another, okay, I've done this for so long. I've gotten away with it for so long. I'm going to weep. I'm going to get past the mentality of, the intellect of these two, people. And I'm going to get past them and beat them in their own game here. They're trying to catch me. So that ain't going to work. I'm going to win.
Some of the things you're talking about that he appears to be doing with the officers are actually key ingredients to the process of grooming, right? So, for example, presenting yourself as benign, that everything you're doing is coming from a loving place and a thoughtful place, right? Or even the way that the story starts out as a we and we get increasingly isolated until you're all mine, or even the idea that you're speaking in a tone that makes you sound like you're a loving person and you're understanding and you're empathic and and what a good dad I am and whatever. In other words, it just seems to me that he's using the old tricks that you would use in a grooming technique, and he thinks that these people are stupid enough to believe him because he's used to deceiving children, not adults. He talks to these cops like as if this is an imagination land, and they're going to cut. And that's the other thing I think we have to remember with this guy is the boundary between fantasy and reality is very thin. And I saw that in other interviews with him. There's a lot of slipping into things that you think are just total fantasy land, So, but I think he is a BS artist who's used to deceiving children. And or people that are weaker willed or whatever, and he doesn't understand that they could tell he's full of crap. But if we proceed, you'll see that it's going to start to get pretty interesting. I think you're right, though, Chris. They used an open-ended technique to sort of get him to splash everything at the canvas.
Yeah, I mean, if you, he picks that neighbor who walks their dog in the middle of the field, and he'd be able to win them over, easily. Because they're suckers.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep moving, Josh.
And then after you dropped her off, what did you do?
Stayed, talked to her for a minute, made sure, is it all right that you're going early? Because it was still early.
Mm-hmm.
She said, yeah, it's fine. I'm going to hang out and wait for my friends to get there, which she does sometimes. So it didn't sound, outrageous or anything. That was it. Told her to have a good day. I loved her. She told me she loved me too. I turned around to leave, and I was watching her in my rearview mirror, and she looked like she was walking in the right direction. She was rummaging in her bag a little bit, like I said, but still sort of just shambling in the right direction while she was doing it. So it looked normal. It looked okay.
Okay, and then what did you do after you left the area?
I left to go to the local vape shop because I needed some more vape juice. They weren't quite open yet, so
of course he needed vape juice.
Yeah, and you notice he locked her into having the bag.
Yeah, and I bet he knows right where the vape shop is too.
Right.
Yeah,
the bag's already in the trash, by the way.
Yeah, but
he
connected it to the victim.
Yeah, mm-hmm.
That it disappeared with her.
Mm-hmm. Right, to give the false impression that if you found it somewhere, she might have dropped it or thrown it out, because I think part of what he's doing, Chris, is he doesn't know what they know, so he always has to give a statement that's where, like, if they have him on camera or they whatever, he is preempting it by giving a story that's loose enough that then you give him a piece of information. So, well, actually, we caught you on a camera moving this way. Then you go, oh, that's right, that's right, yeah. When I said I went there, yeah, that's right. I remember. Yeah, that's the ticket.
It almost sounds like when he answers, he's gauging their response. You know what I mean?
Yep.
He's like, well, then I went to, and then kind of waits for them to, and they're not even saying anything.
You know who uses that technique a lot? Phony palm readers and psychics and things. It's a technique of you throw out everything, and then you wait for the person to give you a little bit of information. You go, that's right. And then you go with in other words, the best thing to do if you were trying to test the person who claims to be psychic is to say absolutely nothing. Because if they're psychic, they should pick it up from you without any clues. But what they do is they listen for your little statement, and then I think that technique is called the rainbow ruse, if I remember correctly, or shotgunning. Shotgunning is where you say something that's going to be true of somebody, right? So you have like 100 people in the audience to go, the person who's the spirit talking to me, initial is T, like someone's going to raise their hand, right? So that's shotgunning. But with the trick of when it's one-on-one, when they're being a phony psychic or whatever, is the rainbow ruse. So you go, you say, this person, that they're male, they're large, they have black hair, they whatever, and the person goes, black hair? Oh,
yeah.
No, I'm wrong. It's the lighting. It's brown hair.
Dirty brown.
No, blonde. It actually is blonde. They're telling me their hair used to be blonde and it changed in the next world. Anyway, they said to tell you, it's like and I think
it's a fortune cookie.
I love that. It's statistically children turn north. I mean, come on. Everybody knows that.
Going back home, waited about an hour or so, and then went back and checked the vape shop again. It was open, so I got what I needed there, and came back.
Do you remember what time you came home?
The first time was probably right around 10, close to it. And then I waited here and went back to the vape shop. Probably finished at the vape shop and came back home again.
Didn't the wise men like travel with the North Star too?
So they followed the Christmas star. There was this idea in Zoroastrianism, the faith of that they probably, at least one of them would have believed in.
It's actually,
there was a new star in the heavens. It had to correspond with some prodigy on the earth, the appearance of some new prodigy on earth. So they had to follow it to see what the heck it corresponded to. It was supposed to be something in the heavens that was not there before, like a strange new star. You're talking about the Christmas story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
wasn't it
nowhere? Yeah, that they
one of the camels got bit by a snake or something.
Yeah, a little after 11.
Okay. You said the first time that you hung out was a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Was there when you got here at 10? Okay.
I think so. She might have been at her blood appointment. Let me double check. I know she had a blood appointment at some point during the day.
It's okay. We don't have to ask her right now.
Sorry, everything's a blur.
So she might have been here. She might have not have been here
I
at the first time.
believe she was here because she was sleeping in as much as she possibly could because she's been messed up with a new work schedule. So she had to be here because she didn't want to sleep in.
Okay.
I'll double check, but yeah, I believe she was here.
And then what time did you say you left again to the smoke shop?
Maybe after an hour or so, maybe 11 or so.
Okay. And then what time did you?
Right. You see the Rainbow Ruse, right?
Yeah, I love
been
this
there. She could have not been there because this way, no matter what they know, he could say, "Yeah, that's it."
Yeah, that's the one. That's the ticket, as you said earlier. And I love this one is whenever somebody brings a friend into the conversation, i.e., let me double check. It's the idea of,
Frank.
Hey, if you don't believe me, and go ask Frank. He's in the lobby. He'll tell you the same thing. Right. And whenever somebody shows up in a conversation with a friend or a double check, okay, let me double check that. Okay. Yeah. What they're saying there is, you know what, let me think about this a little bit longer. I got to get my lies in order. Okay. A little bit more, and if you don't believe me, ask Frank. He's sitting in the lobby.
Well, one of my favorite interrogation techniques is when you have two people that they're interrogating and they separate them and they go back and forth. Well, you should have heard what your buddy just told us. And then it'd be, and like the whole time they're like, how trustworthy is this person? Because we both said we'll never rat on each other. Yeah. So he's like, but he's leaving it open. I'll double check for you. Like he's doing them a favor.
Yeah, let me double check. I'm a doctor. I got a lot of credentials, and you know what? But let me double check it just to make sure, and I'll get back with you.
The bar is much different, though.
The bar is a lot higher, when you lock them into these types of stories. Yeah, let's keep moving.
You get to this one.
It's maybe 2 minutes away, so not long after that, I stopped in and got some juice. And
what's the name of this?
Eastman Broadway. It's just over off of John Young. It's not far from the school.
And then after the smoke shop, what did you do? Okay, for how long?
Until 12:30, 12:45-ish.
And then what did you do after that?
I had a couple errands to run over on 192. She was talking about making a BJ shopping list. She just wanted to make sure I was back in time for us to both go pick up. So I was visiting some card shops around the area on 192. I'm kind of a nerd, so we had a new trading card game release, and I was seeing what the situation was with it.
Do you remember what places you visited?
Yeah, Coliseum of Comics. Stopped by a couple Targets, and I was going to go to House Rules Games down by Oak and 192. But I didn't make it that far. I got a flat tire on the way.
Do you remember where you got your flat tire?
It was on 192. I pulled into one of those plazas somewhere. It's been about 10 years since I switched out a tire, though, so I made a lot of rookie mistakes and ended up pinning my thumb between the frame and the jack. Yeah, I'm lucky it's not a lot worse than it could have been.
In that situation, do you think that he's like, he has a hurt finger or a wound and he's trying to get ahead of that going, well, where'd you get that on your finger? Well, I did it. I just told you where I did
In
it.
case you're looking at my hand and wondering.
Right. It's like it's like OJ when he cut his hand to the bone on a piece of glass.
Exactly. In Chicago.
Do you remember the name of the plaza, baby? Do you remember like what stores were?
It was like right before you got to Oak, though, so it was one of those little strips.
Okay. And then,
but I did not make it back in time because of that. I thankfully had the spare. I put that on and tried to get back in time, but caught every red light on the way. She ended up leaving to pick up Maddie without me. I was about 10 minutes late on that. So I called her and let her know what happened. I apologized profusely because I promised I'd be there with her to go pick her up.
Okay, this is where he introduces the mom. It sounds like, had her pick up Maddie without me. So it sounds like this could be problematic for mom if she's lied, in my opinion. Just from that statement in of itself, if they've locked her into the first statement, and now he comes up and says, yeah, I called her.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be able to pick her up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, right there, he's just kind of hinted that she's in the conversation here. And that could be problematic if Maddie's mom has already been interviewed the day before and she has told a different story.
Yeah.
That's opening the door.
And also remember earlier, he said he didn't even really know where this woman was. And now they've made plans, And then the other thing that's weird is, you almost think he's going to have to say, and we were going to go pick her up, but it was going to be half a mile from the school because she didn't want the car pulling up. So we made arrangements. He doesn't even bother to revisit that nonsense story.
Yeah.
And, by the way, never had a flat tire in 10 years, but it happened on this particular day. Boy, is he having a bunch of bad luck.
Yeah, he had every red light.
Everything that could go wrong, flat tire, and he finds out that the kid he loves is gone too, all in one whammy. Boy, is he, parents must have lost a bet with God.
He didn't find that Charizard he was looking for either at the Pokemon shop.
And
the victim. He's a victim.
And the girlfriend's not with him.
Right.
And according to him at this point, right? She's not in the car because he calls her.
Yeah.
And so when did she get out of the car? Or when did she decide not to get in the car? Right. And the day before, if they ask her, because I think she was on the news, it says, yeah, we drove around and we dropped her off over by the church and she sat on the bench. I think mom was or the girlfriend or the mother of Maddie, the girlfriend of this guy, was pretty specific about, some of those details. Okay. Mm-hmm. So they're also, if this is the second interview, they're going, uh-oh, wait a minute. What's this mean? Where's this going? I thought.
Are you suggesting that there's shades of the Summer Wells thing going on where two people get together and one says, this is what you're going to say, which we've speculated may have gone on in if Summer Wells was actually killed, perhaps by a family member. We've talked about that they would have rehearsed it together. This is what you say. This is where you were. This is what are you implying that? Or are you saying that in an effort to, maybe she thought she was telling the truth or that she was covering or whatever, but it doesn't match him.
Yeah, it doesn't match him. And maybe they're in cahoots, not necessarily, that she is part of the dump here. Okay? But it sounds like if I remember right, and Josh, keep me honest here, if the mom had come on TV and they were there together and she gave the statement about, yeah, we dropped her off. She was embarrassed because of my car, that kind of thing. And now all of a sudden he's saying, yeah, I got a flat tire and I wasn't going to be able to pick her up. Meaning Maddie. So I called her and let her know, i.e. the mom, hey, I'm not going to be able to get her. You're going to have to figure out another way of picking her up.
Yeah.
Well, that would have been really good information to know day one from mom that said, look, he called me and said he got a flat tire from where? Out here, blah, blah, blah. And I had to he told me to go pick up Maddie, but she wasn't there. Where was she? I don't know. He told me to go get her. Where? I don't know. She wasn't there. You see where that's going to go? And so I think this is they're probably looking at mom. There's two options. My thought process is we need her. Let's use her as a witness. Okay. And they've discussed it with the DA. And hey, she had a little bit more, and mom has probably come clean and said, look, A, B, C, and D. I know I lied. I'm sorry, but he scared me, blah, blah, blah. Who knows where that's going to go? I'm not going to speculate on that. But, from an investigative analysis point, just listening to that piece of the puzzle, he automatically is putting her out of the car with the flat tire.
But Chris, when I think in the recollection of people who saw him on the side of the road, when he was, if he's guilty, dumping the body, in that area, the forested area, I think there was no wife there. He was, and the other thing that's interesting is, I think, and I said on a different episode of Court TV, and I know other people wound up thinking it was a good idea because I've heard other people reference my saying so, although they didn't say I said it, is I thought, having dealt with a lot of these kind of offenders, that the flat tire story was a way of explaining why at the side of the road he had to go into the trunk and fiddle with something and move it out, because it was like broad daylight probably, and you've got people zipping by, seeing this guy outside the car fiddling around the trunk or the back of the car, and you need a cover story for it. So, I was dealing with a flat tire, that's what was covered up in the blanket, that I was moving, whatever. Because how else could he get away with taking this child? I mean, carrying her, bringing her into a forested area and leaving her there without anybody thinking it was conspicuous. It was, wasn't it sort of on the side of a kind of a main road there?
Yeah, but it was off. It was off, and there was a row. Yeah. It looked like, a hedgerow. And her body was placed in the hedgerow. So, and he could have positioned that car behind that hedgerow. Nobody would have seen him. Okay? So I agree with you. I think the flat tire is the cover story, because he has to have a reason to be seen in that area. Exactly. And his phone maybe is telling the cops where he is at that moment. But
right. What do you think, Josh, of the idea? Oh, Josh hears me. Yeah, Josh, what do you think of the idea that before we proceed with this, that the tire might have been the cover story for removing her from the car for the dumping?
He would have to account for stopping somewhere. I mean, they're going to look at his phone and know that he was stationary for however amount of time. So yeah, I mean, he's going to have to come up with something, and it sounds like the tire was probably the best thing that he could think of. I haven't had one in 10 years, but it just so happens that I had to stop today. It's like Barry Morphew, having to stop and throw trash, and I don't know how many different dumpsters, 5, which is insane, because one dumpster is, yes. I agree.
And I happened to be by the hotel, so I went in and got a free breakfast.
Right.
That's his cover story.
Right. Or stargazing, or heading true north.
No, but I mean darting around because of the mechanism by which it's thought that he may have killed.
And just so everybody knows that the camel was okay after he got bit by the snake.
Just sat and waited.
Horrifying story.
He'd already gone to get her, so I just sat and waited and hung out, straightened up the house a little bit. That was it. Then we got the call.
What do you mean you got the call?
Got the call from her that had not come out. So we started getting worried. Started making calls to her family. Be on the lookout. She might be walking to you.
I wonder, was it?
Did you check on the map the south end? I'm not sure where Greenville is. I noticed. I'm sorry. She forgot her phone, right? Is it normal for her to not have her phone?
Unfortunately, she's severely ADHD, as am I and her mother. So it is not uncommon at all. In fact, very, very usual thing for her to forget things. She'd forget her head if it wasn't screwed on. And we're forgetful about, writing her about that. We'll remind her, and then it will leave our mind. And she'll say, okay, and then it will leave her mind.
And is she on medication for this stuff?
Normally, yes. She's been staying with her grandparents a lot this week while her mom was working.
So he's making an excuse for why she left her phone, and that being severely ADHD.
And him.
What's that?
And him as well.
Right. And
as am I.
It's even worse for teenagers, because I have teenagers. They don't go anywhere without their phone, no matter what they have.
Well, what he's doing is he's also separating himself from her through the week. She's been at her grandparents' house. And play that back about the phone.
Her phone, right? Is it normal for her to not have her phone?
Unfortunately, she's severely ADHD, as am I and her mother. So it is not uncommon at all. In fact, very, very usual thing for her to forget things. She'd forget her head if it wasn't screwed on. And we're forgetful about, writing her about that. We'll remind her, and then it will leave our mind. And she'll say, okay, and then it will leave her mind.
And is she on medication for this stuff?
Normally, yes. She's been staying with her grandparents a lot this week while her mom was working. So she has not been getting her meds a lot.
Okay.
So she was released.
There's an excuse for everything going wrong.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't know if you guys realize this, but when they charged him and they were talking about what they thought he did, that in the early morning hours he moved her and the whole thing, and then he went to the dumpster and he threw out her laptop, her school issued laptop, and the book bag. There is some evidence that she was seen in the car with him returning to the neighborhood, but they believe that she was already dead.
Right.
So you got a picture, either she's like propped up to look like a kid riding around in the car sleeping, right? Or she's like, because she's seen, right? Or, she's drugged or something. I don't know. But the point is, she's driving, and I guess surveillance camera or people see this kid in the car, but she's already deceased. So, I mean, what do you make of that? I mean, that's very disturbing, right? Like, in other words, her corpse is probably like propped up in the car while he's taking the stuff and dumping it off in the dumpster. But don't you think that he would have tried to make it appear she was a living kid?
What was there a cause of death given?
I think I actually, hold on, I'll look. I can tell you, but
because I was just looking, and you would probably think it'd be strangulation, right?
Right. I think I don't know if they've revealed it.
I don't know if they have or if they're going to. Right.
I don't think we know yet, but I think it's very interesting, this thing of potentially propping her up. I mean, Chris, that really speaks to a level of depravity that
I agree.
I mean, just think about that. I mean, he knew this kid for years, and one day just decides to do whatever he does and can actually do that, and then unceremonially dump her stuff while she's potentially dead, sitting there, and then take her somewhere, make up a story about a flat tire or whatever that was, and just bring her into the forest. And, I mean, I think that really something about this.
To your point, to use her as a prop.
Yeah,
exactly. That's how evil this is.
It falls into the category that Michael Stone and I would call evil. Yes. It's pretty bad.
And kind of going back to the beginning when he said that she was asleep on the way to school, because people had seen her, like you said, there were evidence in the car. So
I had time to kill.
Yeah. And like I said, I can't speak for every child, but it would seem odd that a kid would sleep on the way to school. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. What's that?
How many kids do you know that teenagers who say, I'm hungry, let's go to McDonald's, and they fall asleep, and then they wake up allegedly to say, oh, never mind. Right. It must have been a quick nap, because at some point in between the house and McDonald's, she woke up and decided, well, we're not at McDonald's yet. Never mind. Take me to school.
And so he's driving her dead body around, allegedly. I mean, that's what the police felt or feel that he's doing. Like Dr. Gary said, propped up. I mean, it's horrific to even think about.
Or laying down or something, to make her look like she was sleeping. Yeah. But I think she's dead already, just being moved around. And, and because, like I said, Rainbow Ruse, he doesn't know what they know, what's on camera, what people have said. So he needs a narrative that would cover all his bases.
Yeah, he's an organized offender who has staging aspects here.
This is from the investigators. Quote, "We have evidence that shows Stephen Stearns returning to the complex and Madeline was visible in that vehicle. We believe she was already dead at that time."
There you go.
That's so disturbing, right?
Yeah, that's staging. If she's
like
in that front seat, even if she's visible in the front seat, man, he's using that as his alibi, part of his alibi. That's calculating right there.
It's cold-blooded, and it shows an almost inhuman quality that a person could, like a reptile, just sort of achieve their goals with no feeling at all. And do you think also, isn't it interesting that this is less than 24 hours after this kid is missing? There isn't a tear. I mean, he sounds cold.
Yeah, he's past feeling.
Yeah, it's very strange. I mean, anyway, but okay. I don't know how far through this you want to go for part one here, but maybe we could get through.
That's a good place to drop it right there, Josh.
Okay.
And we'll cut into part two.
Yeah. So when it all starts to sort of get questioned and and so forth a little later, but I think we've certainly established that this guy almost certainly meets the criteria for, well, let's put it this way. I think we would agree, Chris, that from an investigative and psychological perspective, this is probably not this guy's first rodeo. He has personality features that are very calculating and controlling and detached. He's clearly, not interested in adults. You get the sense that he has a very intense fantasy life. He can make stories up as he goes and deceive people. The boundary between fantasy and reality is very thin. But also, we have to ask the question of motive. What would be the reason? He had been involved with this child probably in a perverse way for a long time. I wonder if the issue was not that turning 13 made her age out of
or
when
she's pregnant,
or she was going to talk. Yeah,
that's what I think.
You think that? Well, we don't know because they won't release.
We don't know. But the thing is,
right?
If she's pregnant, it's over, and he's going to prison because, if you just look at, like, before they even charged him with murder, these were his charges. It was 8 counts of sexual battery on a child under 12, 5 counts of sexual battery with a child 12 to 18, 7 counts of lewd and lascivious molestations, 40 counts of unlawful possession of materials depicting sexual performances by a child, 10 or more images. That has nothing to do with the murder. And I mean, that is so disturbing on so many levels. Man, he's a monster. He's an absolute monster.
I talked to Dr. Anna Salter, who is one of the leading authorities on sexual violence, I think, anywhere. I mean, you'd agree, Chris. She's on the foundation with us. She's been on the interview room. She's wonderful. And what you said, Chris, she's very impressive. She really knows her stuff. And I mean, Dr. Sam Burgess uses Dr. Salter's interviews to train the forensic students at Boston College. And I was doing I'm writing something, and I kind of talked to Dr. Salter about her opinion on the construct of escalation. Like, let's say you're repeatedly sexually assaulting people. What makes you go over the edge into killing them? And having talked to thousands of these people, I think, she said to me, it's very, very rare that you escalate into killing the person because it's part of the thrill. It's more getting rid of the witness, or they accidentally die because you assert too much force in what it is you're doing. But then once you get a taste for it, you might proceed and to kill. In other words, I think that if this guy has never killed before, this certainly would have represented an escalation from a lot of sexual assault where there was a passive quality of filming her and doing God knows what with the films and the whole thing, but I think that, Chris, I think we'd agree, like, he escalated. And if he's like a lot of these offenders, there has to be, it probably had something to do with too much force was asserted, or she knew too much, or she was getting old enough that she was going to be able to tell someone, or like you say, perhaps she had been impregnated. But the other thing is, Chris, he's not, how do I say this? If you're trying to eliminate a body because of pregnancy, you're going to want to mutilate it a lot more so no one ever discovers that. I mean, he had to know that her body was going to be found and that somebody would be able to figure out if she was pregnant with his child.
He didn't have a lot of time, though.
Well, that's just it. He'd have to be not very bright, or it would have to be pretty impulsive. I mean, it was pretty stupid to take her stuff and throw it in the dumpster.
Yeah, I mean, he's not the smartest person.
Was going to be the explanation for that. Did he wear gloves? Did he, whatever. And but I think you'd agree, Chris, it's an escalation that suggests either the abuse escalated and she died, or she knew too much. She was going to tell someone. She aged out of what he preferred. There was something because it sounds like an elimination murder. And the other thing is that makes it sound like elimination murder is, as I told you from having coined that term and studied it, is there's always that cover story. You need a cover story. It goes with the domestic elimination murder. The real question for me is, what is the role of the mother? And that's the same question that came up on Court TV. Is it possible that he's got years of forcing this child to perform sexual acts and taping it, and the mother doesn't have any idea? I don't know. She is either a terribly grieving mother that was herself a victim of a horrible situation and lost her child, and we have to feel very sorry for her, or we're going to find out that she at least knew something and was kind of neglecting it, or protecting herself, or scared, or she may have even been complicit. But and there's a wide range of options there. I think, Chris, we can't say, right? There's not enough evidence one way or the other.
No, there's not. But there's also common sense,
right?
That puts, you can't always just say, you know what, I didn't know he was doing that to my daughter. Because a lot of times when you interview these victims, even kids, or you sit there and you watch, a forensic interview live as it's happening, and the kid says, yeah, I told my mom. Okay. Or I told my mom that my uncle was doing this, or my neighbor was doing this. And at first she dismissed it like, well, don't say anything, blah, blah, blah. And I've seen a lot of cases like that where mom is like, well, you know what? And they get dismissive, to your point. And if there's other evidence that presents itself, like the car conversation, okay, that's a red flag. That is a red flag if she is telling a story about being present when her daughter's being dropped off, then she has inserted herself into the story. And that begs the question, why? That's a red flag. And if he says, during his interview, the second interview, well, I called her because I couldn't make it to pick her up. So I called mom.
Yeah.
As an investigator, the most logical thing you're going to do is, hey, when we were talking to Stefan, he said he called you. What did he say? And then wherever that person takes that conversation is going to determine whether or not she may or may not have knowledge about what was taking place in that home. And I think at this point, just listening to that, and I think we should verify whether, what her first statement was for part 2. And if her first statement was, yeah, I was with him when we dropped her off, then that's a problem based on what he just told in this interview, because they're locking him down for the second statement.
Well, there were 3 calls to 911.
Mm-hmm.
They call saying nobody's showing up, no cops are coming, or whatever. And I think I actually have it here somewhere that the mother is basically standing there, right? What'd you say?
Let's look it up real fast so that
she's like standing there when he's making the phone calls. Let me just see. It says
he's in the back, right?
Yeah, it says here, several calls to 911 dispatchers on February 26th convey a sense of urgency and concern about the teen's disappearance. We have a missing child since this morning, one caller states. We already called 3 times. Police didn't show up yet. It was the first time deputies in Orange County learned that the teen never showed up at Hunters Creek Middle School. She was last seen at the church next to the school. She was wearing a dark green hoodie, the call continues. She's been missing since 8 a.m. So we want to get everything done as soon as possible to try to find her. And then it says, it goes on to say that they think she was already dead at the time this call was made, right? The police believe she was already dead. So, you get the sense that, I don't know. I mean, she either knows that this is a BS story and is sticking to it, sort of like we think might have gone on in the Summer Wells situation, because she's scared or she's complicit or whatever, or he's told her this and that the kid was dropped off in front of the church at 8 a.m. and never showed up at school, and the mother believes it, and that's the end of it. I think we can't tell one way or the other. Do you have any?
But Josh, let's go look at that. Look at the news.
You want to see her? You want to listen to her first interview?
Yes. Oh, you have that? Oh, good. There you go.
Yeah, we can find it. She was on the news with him. And just like in the Seth Rogers situation.
Oh, yeah, where they're side by side and
yes.
being interviewed. Yeah.
But he's in the background, I think, and he comes and he sits behind her. She's being interviewed and she's really nervous.
Yeah. And you can do this. Okay. Ready?
Yeah, this is it.
That was fast.
Jen, go ahead and tell us what's going on with Maddie.
Well, Monday morning, we took her to school.
We took her to school.
We dropped
her interesting.
To school across the street from a church, which is it's right next to the school.
And there he is.
She crossed.
He's hovering around on purpose, obviously.
The street. And walked to school. What we walked to school.
She's there.
What's that?
She's there. She's telling the world right here that she went with him and dropped her off. That's a problem. Now go back to his statement real fast. Mm-hmm. Do you still have that one?
Yeah.
And let's listen real carefully to what he says about the flat tire.
I didn't make it that far. I got a flat tire on the way.
Do you remember where you got your flat tire?
It was on 192. I pulled into one of those plazas somewhere. It's been about 10 years since I switched out a tire, though, so I made a lot of rookie mistakes and ended up pinning my thumb between the frame and the jack. Yeah, lucky it's not a lot worse than it could have been. Do
you remember the name of the plaza by any chance? Do you remember like what stores were?
It was like right before you got to Oak, though. So,
but his story makes it seem like she wasn't there.
Well, right. And so it's a little confusing. Is this later, after the kid's already gone? But in the morning, he's not putting her in the car. That going to the McDonald's and all this other crap. They're not. She's not a part of. Mom's not a part of that conversation.
Right.
Okay. It sounds like it's him and Maddie that are part of the conversation. And now you have Mom in that first news clip saying, Well, we took her to school. What does mom say? Maybe we need to listen to that a little bit more.
Monday morning, we took her to school. We dropped her off close to school, across the street from a church, which is it's right next to the school. She crossed the street and walked to school, what we thought walked to school. My boyfriend who drove her to school drove away at that point.
So now, if you listen there, she's all over
It was seen on video footage that she hung out in the parking lot of the church for a few minutes and then got up and walked towards the school. But she never made it that walk and that was around 9 a.m. when she got up. She never made it to school after that.
I'm sorry. Is that true that she's on video? Because my understanding is the authorities think she was already dead.
Well, that's what they're saying. And he's got her at 8:20 to 8:40. And she's got her at 9 a.m.
I mean, it seems to me that these statements are already collapsing. I mean, in the face of
and look at him perched up behind her. Like he had, I mean, allegedly has just killed her daughter. And he's just sitting right there is very, very disturbing.
Well, what's even more important, right, to that point, I agree with you 100%. But what if she knows that her daughter's been murdered by the guy sitting behind her?
I am so confused about this lady and have been ever since this story started, because I don't like, are there people that are so naive that they couldn't know that something like this is repeatedly going on in their home over and over? I personally don't think that it could have been kept a secret. I mean, how long can something like that go on? And the reason that I say that I think that she was pregnant is because it just so happens that around 13 years old, young ladies mature, and, you know, because he had been abusing her for years before this. Okay. Now, I don't think that this is just me thinking. I don't think she turned 13 and he goes, 13, time for you to go. I think that something significant happened where he's like, she has to go now. I don't have a choice. Because you think that this guy is just like 13's the limit. I just don't see him doing something like that unless he was forced to, because, and which would go to your point, Dr. Gary, of an elimination murder. I mean, I just don't think that it's coincidence that she was right around the age when she started to get her menstrual cycle and could become pregnant. I don't think that that's happenstance. I don't, but I could be completely wrong.
Or she might have gotten to an age where she was starting to realize that what was being done to her was outrageous, that it wasn't normal, that it isn't what kids do with the person that's supposed to be their father figure. We don't know. I only know that, unfortunately, and I do not want to cast aspersions here unfairly, but I can't help but think that that this woman has been rehearsed into saying what it is that she's saying. She may have even been with him, but you get the sense of him saying to her, "This is what you're going to say, and this is the story. Stick to it." But I don't know that. Do you guys get that sense too, that this is rehearsed?
Well, I know she worked nights, right? Like that was her thing. So he has complete access to the entire house without her there majority of the time at night. Maddie's there by herself, right, with him. So I'm sure that she claims that she didn't know any of this was going on. But Chris, you have the expertise in this violence towards children. What do you think about that?
Well, the only thing that causes me concern is the fact that there had to be a lot of doctor visits with Maddie. And if mom took her to those doctor visits, and if any one of those raised a red flag to the doctors where, the doctor's going to ask you a whole series of questions. Are you sexually active? Are you this? Are you that? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
even to a 12 or 13-year-old today,
Mm-hmm.
right? And mom is sitting in that room, and if she goes, no, but they do a physical exam because that's what you need to get into school, okay? And the doctor goes, whoa, wait a minute, okay? That's not jiving, okay?
Right.
And, or Maddie's saying, yeah, mom, I am, with boys and blah, blah, blah. And so now she's taking preventative measures with her child, i.e. having a conversation about the birds and bees, and saying, here, you're going to do A, B, C, and D, so we don't get these other problems, i.e. pregnancy or anything like that. And so I'm kind of a little confused here as to what her potential knowledge base could be. But
yeah.
But I'm leaning towards this idea that says, wait a minute, you're not that naive yet. And I think that we'll dig into all that on the second part here. Go ahead and wrap this up. And thank you for listening to the Witness Box. Anything going out, guys?
Part 2 is coming.
We'll see you on part 2. Well, make sure you don't go to any games because you'll just be disappointed.
I hope we play the Giants.